Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Jackson. I'm a licensed professional counselor. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. We're about to get started, but I just want to, before we get into our interview and conversation about how do we deal with strained relationships during the holiday season, that of course you take time to subscribe to my channel as we got good stuff going on. We want to provide information about mental health from a centered place. So please subscribe and let's join in on this conversation.
Warm Christmas sweater.
Yes, Christmas. Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Jackson, licensed professional counselor. We have my pal and colleague here, Elizabeth Strong, who is a licensed master's level social worker. And we have worked together. I really wanted to include her on this conversation about how we can deal with strained relationships during the holiday season. As we know, Christmas dinner is approaching. Uh, TikTok. And so how some people are having maybe some anxiety about seeing people, or still maybe even having the trying to, am I going to see? Am I actually going to go? Like making that decision. Am I going to go to the family dinner? Are they going to say something that's going to upset me? How to deal with that? There's even culturally, there's just a lot more way we're moved to like move away from family. We're using a lot of like what I call charged words, very passionate words to describe people and their behavior. And, let's keep it real. Family can be a tricky place to navigate. It just can. We don't get to choose them. We have to learn to accept them. It's a thing. And a lot of the things that they've done to us have impacted us in many different ways, some good, some bad, taking all of it in. So how do we deal with the people that we had no choice of them being in our lives? Yes. So thank you so much, Liz, for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So if we're having a relationship strain or family strain, like how do we know if we should go to the dinner or not? Should we go or should we not go? And that's tricky. That's a big question. Like,
I know.
Go to not go.
I think as therapists, like a lot of people kind of want us to give this like straight answer. Yes, go. No, don't go.
Yes, they do want us to answer the question.
They really do. Sometimes I think our response when we get to know our clients and we're working with them, we can kind of say like, based on what you're telling me, this is what I am hearing you say, but, I think my goal, and I don't know about you, but I imagine it's similar, is to kind of figure out like, what is it that you're A, concerned about if you go to that gathering, and then B, like, what is your goal for this holiday season? Right. Like, and I think it's so important to just kind of recognize what it is that you're looking for. So if your goal is peace, right? Like, then you're going to make a decision based on what is going to be the most peaceful for you and ultimately maybe even your family when making that decision. If your goal is quiet, then you're going to make a decision that's based on that. If your goal is unity, you might not get the peace, but you might do something to maintain the unity of your family unit or whatever unit you might spend Christmas with, if that's your regular Christmas. And so I think you've got to make a decision based on what that is. So if I want peace, sometimes that does mean I'm not going to go to that family gathering, because I can't maintain my peace or sanity if I'm around certain family members.
Right.
But sometimes peace looks like kind of working on myself and preparing myself so that I can attend that family gathering, even though those people drive me up the wall.
Yeah. Even, I like what you said, like managing yourself. So like knowing, okay, I already know what they're going to say. I already know what questions they're going to ask. I already know how they're going to push my buttons. Okay, so how do I take care of myself so I can just say, I'm not going to answer that question at this time, where I really would, setting boundaries with them. Like I really would appreciate if, we didn't bring that subject up. Like we don't talk about my divorce during the family dinner, or, things like that, that family can sometimes bring up in very public, scenarios. And if the matter's private, or if they're bringing up things that you just really don't feel comfortable talking about.
Even, are you single?
Yeah.
You still single? Didn't bring anybody this year? Sometimes you got to prep for that.
Mm-hmm. Or if last Christmas you had somebody and now this Christmas where is such and such? Just.
Yeah. Yeah, because that can be hard. That brings up that pain. It brings up, whatever led to that relationship ending. If you are somebody who desires to be in a relationship and you are single, like I think that is, I would say that's a pretty universal, difficult question to have to wrestle with when you're seeing family. And I think a lot of people aren't even seeing their family that often, right? Like some people see them more regularly, but sometimes this is the only time of year you see people. So it makes sense that they just want to know about your life and they're trying to catch up. Usually, and I can't speak for all people, but usually I think it's not malicious, right? When people are asking those questions, it is like well-intentioned. So I think remembering that, like, okay, if they're going to ask that stuff, especially the family members you don't see a lot, like it's probably coming from a good place. They care about you. They want to know about your life. They might not know enough about you to ask anything other than the things that are like, wow, so obvious, like you're single, dating anybody, that kind of stuff. But I understand why that stuff can also be very painful for people.
So maybe a tip could be for family members to maybe not ask questions. If you don't see somebody, then maybe just don't see them and not ask, why the person didn't bring their boyfriend or girlfriend back to, this holiday. And, to also think about ways to engage with each other that isn't like about where they are with these like status symbols, of like having a way to engage with each other that is warm and it's friendly. Like if there's like a game that you guys are playing or something to do as a family together to connect, but isn't in a place where people are like getting an update on your life, which may be something that's like really personal. So that could be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like even just like asking instead of like, oh, you single this year, saying like, something like, I don't know, how's life going right now? I mean, that's so simple, but that's
how's this pandemic treating you?
Well, and that's the thing too, though, that could be a really like touchy subject. I know some families are really divided on that topic alone. Right. So I think even like preparing before you go to a family gathering, like, okay, who's going to be there? So like my husband's family, I love them. Like they really are a wonderful family. And it's so funny because they all agree. Like they have the same thoughts and beliefs on things, yet somehow they still argue. Like I don't really get it, but so like being aware of those things, like being aware of those like hot button topics. And also I think it's important to be realistic, right? Like, there might be that family member who just likes to argue. They're just going to make an argument out of anything.
Yeah.
So just like knowing that.
Yeah, preparing yourself. But you did bring up like, so yeah, what if your beliefs don't align? Like, what if there used to be a time, I don't know if you remember, I sound like a aged person. Maybe I am aged. But where we didn't talk about like religion, politics, those were like off the table things. Now that is not our culture. It's, our beliefs aren't very much, and they have always been, but just now it's more like symbolist and more something we take as like identifiers. And we use them to like, there's so many flags. They're in our dress and our bumper sticker. It's like we want to make sure we are seen as our beliefs. It's a part of our identity very much so now. And so for people who do have, it's awesome that for your husband's family, they believe the same things. That's amazing, even though they still have, yeah, yeah. But like that's not the case for most families. And I remember like they had some funny SNL skits about it, the hello from the other side. But but like how do we manage that? I think for me, I have a Barney part, I call it. It's like I just want everyone to get along. We're all family. I love you, you love me. I have that part of me. And so that part of me is like, I just wish we could get to a place where we could just agree to disagree. Like
some people don't want to do that though.
Yeah, I understand. It's just I think that's a place where, and like trying to figure out how to do that, within our families, and especially, with families getting together. And so they're like, if you, I could imagine that there's a scenario of this, like, if you're not vaccinated, then you can't come. And then like, well, I feel strongly about not being vaccinated. And then like, well, so like all of that, like, how do we, so how do we get to a place where we can like just accept each other where we are, like accept I know, like that's just my Barney part. I just, can we all just love each other?
Yeah, no, I like, I think the same way. I'm like, can we just stop talking about that stuff? Like, let's just not bring it up, but I get, like, especially this year, last year it wasn't vaccines. It was kind of like a bigger conversation about COVID in general. I think this year, the big topic, it will be vaccines and testing, and how strict are you going to be? How not strict are you going to be? And I think and that kind of goes back to, am I going to that family gathering at all? And so, I do think in terms, it comes back to, and this is so hard, right? We can never control anybody else.
Can you say it again? I think that
we can't control. We can't change them. We can't control them, right? They are not our responsibility. And it's so hard because, like, you might be really passionate about whatever side you're on, on, specifically the COVID stuff this year. And so, and I get why people see things from both sides. I can understand where they're coming from. I might not agree with everything, but I can see, why people are so passionate about where they're at. But most people, I think, don't do that. My mother-in-law told me that. She was like, yeah, most people don't look at both sides. I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true.
We don't. I think, we could go on a whole tangent about like the algorithms and how it is even making things worse, right? We've seen the documentaries and the like. That's something we have in common with the docs. But it's like, it's made it, it's made where we used to have like a middle ground, it's made it more polarizing. So it's like, okay, and these are serious issues, right? These are not, women's, reproductive rights. That's a very serious issue. And so, the LGBTQI, plus community, like all of that these are very serious issues. And so like for you, the thinking of like, oh, you don't believe in that, or you do believe that, like, I think we do kind of jump to assumptions sometimes of like, oh, you must be a horrible person because you don't agree with me and on this, instead of saying that they just have different life experiences that have come to them, feeling this way. And that is just how we come to develop our beliefs. It's just different life experience depending on the decade you were born versus, there's a lot of like anti-boomer conversations about baby boomers. I'm like, just give them a break. But they,
but that's not like that conversation about, okay, this person doesn't support whatever I believe. So then that means they are insert intense language here, right? Like, one side likes to use that term snowflake, which is offensive, like other sides, it's the ists, right? Racist, sexist, homophobic, like a lot of those terms. And I'm not saying that people can't be any of those things, right? And there are certain family members or people in our lives who do hold beliefs that are unhealthy. At the same time, just because somebody questions something, it doesn't make them an ist. And I think it's so important to remember, like, somebody who has really strong beliefs about vaccination one way or the other, you have to remember where they're coming from. You have to remember, like, what has happened in their life, or what are things that they might be exposed to that might scare them, whether it's scaring them into getting every vaccine that's available, or whether it's scaring them away from vaccines. I have people in my life that are certainly on far ends of both sides. And I see it. I see why they think the way that they think. And I get where they're coming from, but it doesn't make them necessarily like toxic. It doesn't make them a bad person just because they hold that belief. And so I think we've made these beliefs, bigger than our relationship with people. And that's something that we have to remember. Like, how important is my relationship with this family member? Is my belief bigger than this relationship? Or is this relationship more important to me than the belief? Because I can accept somebody without accepting all that they believe.
That is big. What you just said. Is this the question? Is this belief bigger than the relationship? And I think we are holding on to the ideas because the ideas are so entrenched into now our identity.
Yes.
And so that's when it becomes then it's personal. Now we've personalized it, and so it's like, oh, you don't agree with who I am, then and that's when that's when the relationship becomes like, well, I'm just gonna move away. When you're right. I mean, I don't think that there's anybody who didn't have like a tinge of like anxiety about taking the vaccine who took it, just because one, COVID is new, then the politicizing of it all, and everybody's saying something, everybody's saying something. And so I think we do have to take people where they are, even with the conversation about racism during George Floyd. I think everybody was so angry, rightfully so, and a lot of people who did have a blind eye, started to open their eyes. And we have to like manage ourselves, like you were talking about, manage our anger about it. Not that we don't, invalidate our own anger, but just manage it enough so that we can like even have compassion towards the person whose eyes are just being open to, and not be if they ask a question, or if they come with like a very like, oh, I think we should do this, or some type of, because they wanted solutions, like, oh, now I want to be a part of the solution. I don't know. Did you watch Sex and the City? Have you watched the recent?
No, but I've read some things about it.
Okay. Well, okay. So Miranda, she's a lawyer, for those who know. She's a lawyer, and she is probably considered in the boomer generation. So she had like this awakening during the pandemic where she's like, I want to be a feminist. I want to be like an active, role. So she's going back to college, and her professor was African American, and she had box braids, like these very long box braids. And so she and the way they had the classroom, it was like a circle. It was almost like a group therapy, like a circle.
Oh, like a social work circle.
Yeah. And so the the professor is about to sit down, and she's like, oh, no, that's where the professor sits. And she's like, I am the professor. She's like, well, I didn't think you were the professor because of your hair. And then that became, so yes, just exactly, just what you did. And then she's like, no, I'm not saying that because you were Black. I actually took this class because you were Black. And then so then it gets worse, right? But I think that moment just showed like where some people are and how we have to have just a little compassion, I think, about people are at different stages because of their life and their experiences. Miranda's lived a pretty white life, right? And so now she's becoming in a very privileged life. She's a attorney, so now she's like, oh, there are women who need me to fight for them, and there's all these social justice issues I need to fight. And so her intentions are pure. She just like, how do I navigate these waters of I don't know what to say all the time, and she did make up for it later in the episode, but she was definitely, having some struggles where, people who probably would have seen her and her classmates looked at her like, what is up? And so having that same, it's like you have to maintain the desire to connect.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're balancing your beliefs. Like and I think that's going to be truly a continual struggle, for our society. I was about to, to manage because we do need to connect. We need each other.
Oh yeah, we do. We need those, I know there are family members who are just never gonna, something has been severed at some point.
Yeah.
It's not going to be repaired. There's a good reason why you don't want anything to do with them, and you might have to see them this time of year because they're part of the family. And I understand that those situations absolutely exist in a lot of families.
Absolutely.
I think at the same time, that is your family, and there is something meaningful for most people about those family relationships. And so I think it is that the idea of what can I gain out of this relationship if I let go of some of the anger that I'm holding on to about that topic, right? What is it that maybe I can learn about where they're coming from if I approach it with like a sense of wonder versus like an attack, So if like, let's say, I have a strong belief on vaccines and someone else has a strong belief the other side on vaccines, instead of being like, well, you shouldn't get vaccinated because blah, 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 or what's wrong with you? You need to get vaccinated because you're killing people. Like that kind of talk, you're not going to have relationship and connection with that kind of talk. But like, if you can say, well, help me understand, what is it about the vaccine that you feel strongly about? That's as therapists, that's one of the questions that is helpful. Like, help me understand where you're coming from. I'm wondering, let's wonder together. You probably can't say that to your family members because they'll be like, what is wrong? How much have you been drinking? But, like having that mindset of wonder versus, just attack. Because let's be honest, the holidays are also a time when people are a lot of times drinking, and sometimes those things come out in a way that
unfiltered.
Yep. And so I think it's, being realistic. And that's something to be mindful of too, right?
Absolutely.
Do I need to, if I feel really passionate about something and I know that people in my family are going to bring it up and they have different opinions, maybe I should watch what I'm putting into my body during that time. And I get it's a holiday, whatever, but maybe I'd leave a little early. And if I really wanted to have some wine or, the punch or whatever, maybe I make that at home. And when I get home, I watch a Christmas movie or whatever, Die Hard, I don't know. And, and I have that drink later. That might be something too, to be mindful of at family gatherings. Just because if we know that we might be unfiltered, then it's a lot harder for us to maybe manage those strong emotional reactions in the moment.
Very good stuff.
Yeah.
Great point. So I wanted to bring up this last one because this one's a heavy one.
Yeah.
Heavier than the next. Is forgiveness necessary? So there's some beliefs out there that forgiveness isn't necessary in order for you to like work on your own personal healing, but then also like your connections with your family. Like, I don't need to forgive them. They don't deserve it. They did what they did, and they tell me I was doing my best, and that's not good enough for me. And I think that for me, what I've seen, I feel like we misinterpret what forgiveness is. Like we feel like forgiveness is like condoning the behavior, which forgiveness isn't. Forgiveness is like allowing them back into your life. That's not forgiveness. You don't have to do that. So I think we sometimes misinterpret and don't understand what forgiveness is. It really means like you're not making the person pay for what they did anymore.
Yeah, forgiveness, it's like an attitude of letting go, I think. I think the other things you're talking about that people often associate with forgiveness, those are truly restoration and reconciliation. Those are way bigger than forgiveness. And restoration and reconciliation are not top things that you have to do if someone's hurt you. You never have to let them back in your life. You never have to like rebuild a relationship with them if they've hurt you in very deep ways. I mean, you and I have worked in community mental health. We've worked in Detroit. I mean, we've worked with families who have had deep wounds and generational wounds.
Absolutely.
And it makes sense why some of the people that we've worked with would not want those family members back in their life.
Absolutely.
So, I think when we talk about forgiveness, we're not talking about the condoning of the behavior. We're not talking about restoring that relationship or reconciling. Forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is, in my opinion, forgiveness is always for you. It's not for the other person. Because truthfully, a lot of people might be like, okay, you forgive me, whatever. And some people might even take that forgiveness and go like, well, who do you think you are forgiving me? And so I think a lot of times the forgiveness it's more the attitude of your heart, the attitude of your soul, like where you're at. And it's just letting go of the pain that person has, the ongoing thoughts and, preoccupation with what that person has done with you. It doesn't mean you condone that behavior.
Absolutely.
But it is that attitude of just letting go. It happened, right? You can't go back no matter what. You can never change that thing. But what you can do is move forward when you're ready, and everybody's ready, obviously, at different times. And just because it's Christmas doesn't mean you're ready to let go of those hurts and those, hang-ups, those things that have happened in the past. Even if it's something as simple as, not simple, but something a little less, intense, but just we disagree politically. Right. And now we've said some nasty things to each other on Facebook or, in person at Thanksgiving it happened. Right. So like that it might be something for you that like if you can forgive some of that, right. And just I'm going to move forward. I'm going to know that this person and we're not going to have a cordial discussion about this topic.
Right.
This is someone who can't handle compassion. This is someone, and it's accepting that, right? Like you and I have both learned about that radical acceptance. Christmas is the time to radically accept a lot of stuff.
It sure is.
And it really, it's open hands. I mean, that's how I think of radical acceptance. It's just saying, this is what it is. It's not what I think it should be. It's not what I want it to be. And I don't have to like it, but I am going to let go of it because it's not doing me any good. It's making me feel worse.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that is where we kind of like, I won't misinterpret, I'll say, what protect your peace, set your boundary is about. I think when it becomes to a place, we don't talk enough about like rigid boundaries, about how we, because after a while, rigid boundaries is a brick wall. That's my, that, and if you build a brick wall of boundaries around yourself, nobody can get in.
Yeah.
And then you have to sit with yourself too, if you're thinking like, if that is comforting to you, right? If that sounds comforting to you, then that's maybe something to get curious about. Like, I wonder why I would like to be surrounded by 4 brick walls, and that's comfortable for me. Yeah.
Prison, but
Yeah, it does sound like a prison. Yeah, it does. But it seems like that's kind of sometimes, I, as a person who creates memes, on social media, that sometimes there's a part of me that's like really wondering how someone's interpreting it. And I try my best to like come from a very centered and balanced way, but we do sometimes use that type of information to like reinforce the unforgiveness and as a way of like, and that's right, I'm setting my boundary, I'm not going to forgive, or I'm not going to go to the dinner. And it's not a talk to say you should or shouldn't go to the dinner. You may not be ready to go to the dinner. You might have checked in and you're like, I'm too activated. That's my new word instead of triggered. I'm too activated.
Oh, I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah,
I like that.
Triggered. I don't know.
I'm triggered by the word triggered.
Same. I think it diminishes what an actual like, trauma. And not to say that doesn't happen. Of course it does. Sure. I mean, especially like you said, with this season being upon us, it is where we do have to like do a lot of work to accept a lot of things that are painful. And so a part of that is like, okay, accepting, all right, this relationship with my uncle, my father, my mother, my grandmother is not what I want it to be. They have hurt me. They have said things. They have done things that have offended me. And at the same time, like you said, what is the goal? What do I want to get out of this season? What does peace really look like for me? Because we do have like this part of us that's like very, that has these expectations. It's supposed to be like this. But we can't control how people show up, because people also have their own stuff.
Yeah.
And then we also have our own limitations. Go figure. Of how we show up. And so we want that same forgiveness. If we were to fumble the ball, Miranda, she came in and she fumbled the ball. She was like, I didn't think you were the professor because you're braids and because you're black. Oh, so she fumbled the ball. She deserved some compassion for that, because her intentions were not.
They were good. Like, she wants to learn, she was there, I haven't seen it, but she was there to learn. It sounds like she wanted to grow in her understanding of what's going on in the world. And, you're probably going to make some mistakes along the way. I mean, let's be real, like where we used to work, like I'm white and most of my clients were black. Yeah. And so like I had a lot of learning to do. And I had things that I needed to learn, and I had growth that needed to happen because I grew up in a pretty white suburb, and so like there were different cultures that I was exposed to. So I'm thankful for that. But like, I wasn't exposed to very much of Black culture, and any Black kids that I went to high school with, they were kind of expected to kind of fall into what like white culture looked like, and I know that probably was challenging. And I know that some of the kids that I knew after high school had talked about how hard that was. Absolutely. And how nice it was to go to college and join a Black fraternity, whatever. But there's growth that like we all need. And there's things that we all, I think that's another thing, right? Let's be realistic about, I don't know everything. Hold on, I'm going to say that again. I don't know everything.
I don't know everything either. I think we both need to, I don't know. And I think that goes so many places, right? Like I don't know everything. To one, like I think sometimes we jump to conclusions about like why someone's showing up or why someone's, the intention behind someone's behavior. We don't understand their whole story. That's why
No.
a part of the thing I'm passionate about is story, and like actually telling each other your story,
Yeah.
because that's like the key to our compassion, like unlocking it, like, oh, and not to say that their story is going to excuse their behavior. We're not, or what
Right.
happened. It's not to excuse it. It just explains their limitations, just like
Yeah.
I have them, and I know where where mine stem from. I have my own
Yeah.
limitations.
Oh,
And
I don't. Yeah.
Liz doesn't. I do. I have limitations.
Yeah, no, I
Uh-huh.
certainly do. I think, yeah, and I think that's so important, right? We all have things that we've been through. Like, I think we don't talk enough about, first you talked about rigid boundaries. Oh my gosh. I think a lot of people, when they first start boundary setting, they tend to go all or nothing with it. It's like, well, I won't let anybody treat me this way now. It's like, well, but like, okay, boundaries are meant to be flexible. Boundaries, boundaries should be like a tree, like a big oak tree, right?
Mhm.
Like even the biggest oak tree can be flexible in the wind. It has to be, or else it's going to break, you know? And so I think it's so important, like, to be cognizant of the people in our life and remembering that, like, when we put too much on them, when we're not honest with ourselves and we're not real with ourselves and real with what we are going to likely expect. Now, I know there's always things that kind of can hit us, that we weren't expecting, or that we're like, oh my gosh, I never would have planned for that. But like, I think when we try our best to be honest here, right, it allows us to, I think, have more compassion for others. I think that's something that's come up a lot just in the work that I'm doing right now is, most of us don't do a good job of giving ourselves compassion. So if we're not doing a good job with ourselves, then we have all this like pain and all this like, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, all these things that are like fueling a lot of our behaviors. And if we're not giving ourselves that compassion for those types of issues, how easy is it going to be for us to give compassion to others who might be exhibiting those same behaviors?
I have my sign. It's my be kind sign.
Uh-huh.
And people normally think it's like be kind to other people. I'm like, no, this is for you. For you to be kind to you. And you're so right. I think especially the reason why this compassion is so important, I think, for families is because oftentimes, and it's truly most of the time, the relationships we struggle the most is in the parental relationships. And there's a part of you that is like your parent. It's just reality. And so if you're struggling and warring with them, that's gonna affect you. It's truly gonna affect you and impact your relationship with you. So I just there's no easy answer to this. I think that's definitely what we've come to as a conclusion. There's no easy answer to this. Forgive to not, or not to forgive, to go to the dinner, to not go to the dinner. I think it's for you to really, sounds like, be self-aware and know, are you ready to go? Be curious, lean into that curiosity of like, what is it that's making me not want to go? What parts of me do want to go? What are some realistic expectations? And how can I connect with my family, and while still protecting myself, and protecting the connection.
Yeah. So I've been watching Selling Sunset lately, like, which, not the greatest TV, but it's a great daytime show. But these two characters, these two ladies, they got into it. And the one came to the other and was like, let's kind of move forward. And the one was like, well, I'm not quite ready. And so the one was getting married, and she invited all the women in their real estate office to her engagement party. So this other woman was like, I don't think I'm ready for that. I don't think I'm ready to go. But she also was like, but I want to work on our relationship. So she sent some really beautiful flowers to be delivered on the day. And I thought that was like a really, neat way to say, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be, cruel. I'm just not there yet. So this is me, this is my olive branch for what I'm able to do right now. And not that we always have to send flowers but it might even just be like sending a text message the day of, if you're not going to come, saying like, hey, I really love you guys. This year it was just really hard for me to be there because of this or that. I hope to be with you next year. Like even something as simple as that, sending a handwritten card, if you have it in your budget to like send a gift or send something, that can be a nice way of saying like, I'm not trying to do this to you. I'm doing it for me.
Or even, I think it's awesome. So like my mind went to when you were talking about that, of like, or even, I think sometimes we put so much on the day, like Christmas Day or, whatever, holiday we celebrate around this time. It's like, it could be you come the day after and have like the needed conversation.
Yeah.
Or like, and have the needed conversation where you may not again see eye to eye, but there's some understanding there that can be established. And like, hey, I'm on the road to radically accepting this is how you are and this is who you are. I want you to know that I love you and I care about you, and at the same time, coming to the family dinner was just, it was a lot. But I just wanted you to know, though, that I'm still like working towards this.
I think like people being aware of like these words, right? A lot of times we want either or, all or nothing. But I think a better thing to focus on in our head, a better phrase is both and. We can do both. There's an and, right? It doesn't have to be or all the time or but, right? It can be, I love you. And this year, it's not healthy for me to be at this gathering. I think I'm too hurt to make the gathering fun. I think I'm going to detract from the fun that everybody else is going to have because I think I'm not going to be able to suck it up or whatever words you want to use, but like hold it together that day. So I love you. And for all of us, I'm going to step out, to make it better for everybody. And my goal is, next, what's the next, maybe big family, maybe Easter. I don't know if people celebrate Easter, right? Sometimes families just get together because they get together.
Birthday
gathering. Yeah. But whatever that next one is, like, I'm working towards being available for the next one. I need to manage what's going on here.
Awesome. Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. It is tough. Family relationships are difficult to navigate. They truly are. And they also reflect our relationship with us. And so that's why with ourselves. And so that's why it's so important for us to continue to sit with the uncomfortable, and to be cautious about being avoidant in this area, just because, we can tend to avoid parts of ourselves in that space. And so thank you so much for having or joining me in this conversation. I truly wish you and your family a wonderful holiday season.
You too.
Thank you. And take care, everybody.